The Denver Broncos are gearing up for Sunday's matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs, and we'll give you the tail of the tape, a look up at some of the key matchup statistics going into this game. Plus, we'll take you behind the scenes inside the Broncos locker room and get you players' thoughts on the buildup for this week's game. You're going to get all that and a cup of coffee in this morning's brand new episode. Good morning, Broncos. Good morning, Broncos country. Welcome into another installment of GMB, your daily Denver Broncos conversation. Hopefully you have a cup of coffee or have some breakfast alongside with us every single day. Mile High Sports YouTube page, 9 o'clock a.m. Mountain Time on weekdays. I'm Cody Rourke, Broncos reporter from Mile High Sports. And real quick, want to give everybody a shout out. Thank you so much for tuning in and consuming the content that we have over here on Mile High Sports. Mile High Sports is every team, every day. We have the Pickaxe and Roll podcast hosted by Ryan Blackburn, our Denver Nuggets beat reporter. You also get the Hockey Mountain High podcast with Arif Dean covering the undefeated Colorado Avalanche. They're off to a great start on the season. You want all the coverage and all the content about Denver Nuggets, Colorado Avalanche, Denver Broncos. You get all that stuff here on MHS. So do us a favor, hit that subscribe button so you never miss out. And a special shout out to our friends over there at Superbook Sports for sponsoring today's episode of the show. Going on and obviously going through the buildup of this weekend's game here for the Denver Broncos, we always like to take a look at a tail of the tape. What do the numbers say? What are the key storylines going into it? Now, first off, I think we could talk about the practice report from yesterday. The Broncos right now at a very, very good spot in terms of their health status going into Sunday's game. The only player who did not participate that was on the active roster was running back and special teams ace Dwayne Washington, who popped up with a knee designation. He did not participate, and we'll see where he's at on Thursday's practice and also Friday's practice. Baron Browning was a full participant with a wrist designation. He's ready to rock and roll and go here against KC. He just wants to get more reps, knock a little bit of the rust off of him from being able to play in his first game this past week. The explosiveness, the burst, and the strength is there for Baron, so he could be a little bit of a nice wrinkle added into the mix here for the Broncos this week against Kansas City. And Justin Simmons still, once again, we talk about that groin injury that he dealt with in training camp. He's just going through the maintenance part of it. He was a limited participant in Wednesday's practice. So Broncos healthy right now, and that's a good sign. I think at this juncture, I want to try to reflect. I think Denver had so many different injuries at this time last year, right before the NFL trade deadline, and we were all sitting here wondering, like, what are they going to do? How is this going to impact what they decide to do in the NFL trade deadline? And it was what it was, especially at outside linebacker. Denver, I remember, was decimated from an injury standpoint, and then they traded away Bradley Chubb. That was a little bit of a tough thing for them to have to try to overcome, and unfortunately, it didn't work out for them. And Baron Browning, after the trade deadline, did get hurt. He had, I think it was the hip injury or knee injury initially that had popped up there. So we'll see where things are at. I mean, obviously, Denver in a good spot. And we know Kansas City, they're going to be without Nick Bolton, one of their key linebackers. He had an interception on Russell Wilson in that first matchup on Thursday Night Football just a couple of weeks ago. But they were also healthy for the most part, too, coming into this game. So this is going to be a challenge here for Denver. It's going to be a cold afternoon kick out there. So if you're planning on making the game, make sure you dress warm for the occasion here. But let's take a look at the tail of the tape, some of the key numbers here. I think when you look at where Denver's at versus where Kansas City is at in terms of time of possession, the Broncos ranked dead last at 32nd in the NFL in terms of TOP, holding on to the ball for an average of 27 minutes and 2 seconds. You look at Kansas City, they're ranked fourth right now in the NFL in terms of time of possession, 32 minutes and 26 seconds. So they possess the football quite a bit. They have long drives. Obviously, they have the ability to hit the explosive plays early on and have shorter drives, but the fact that they seem a little bit more well-balanced here, that they're commanding time of possession, they're driving down, they're taking a lot of time off the clock, and then they're scoring, that's problematic for any team that tries to face them. So I think that's a key metric to take a look at here. So let's take a look here at the Broncos offense in comparison to the Kansas City Chiefs defense. Denver is the 21st ranked offense right now in the NFL, averaging 311 yards on the ground. The Chiefs defense, they're the seventh best defense right now in the NFL in terms of yards allowed per game. They're only allowing 294.6 yards per game. And we all know that first matchup that Denver had against KC, Denver's offense going into halftime had 94 total yards of offense. They only got 103 yards after that in that second half. So not very productive there, but that's a byproduct of how good the Kansas City Chiefs defense is playing right now. They're a top 10 defense in a lot of the key major categories, and I'll go over those right now. They're eighth in yards per play, only allowing 4.91 yards per play. They're second in the NFL right now defensively in points allowed per game. They're only allowing 15 points per game. Like I've said it before, and I've said it on record. This Kansas City Chiefs defense this year might be the best defense they've had in the last 7 to 8 years. And that, I think, is a little bit of a scary thought considering how well they're playing, how healthy they are right now. And on top of that, their offense, as we all know, is very, very dangerous. So that makes things very, very problematic for the rest of the AFC and even for the Broncos going into this matchup. They're only allowing opposing quarterbacks to pass for an average of 188.9 yards per game. That's good right now for sixth in the NFL. They're third in fumble recoveries. They have 6 fumble recoveries on the year. They're ninth in takeaways. They've had 11 takeaways so far this season, and they're also seventh in sacks. They've accumulated 22 total sacks on the defensive side. They've also, when we flip it to the inverse and we look at where the Broncos offense is in comparison to these categories here, well, you look at where Denver's at right now, and offensively, they are averaging a top 10, 5.61 yards per play right now. So they're ranked 7th in the NFL in that category. They're averaging 21.1 points per game right now, which is good for 19th in the NFL. They're averaging 111 yards on the ground. That's 17th in the NFL. And they're passing for 199.4 yards per game, which is good for 22nd. And they've only had 4 passes intercepted this season. So that's good for 6th in the NFL. Denver's done a really good job. Russell Wilson's done a pretty good job of holding on to that. And ideally, thinking about it too, you look at where things went wrong for Russ in that one game. I mean, this statistic would be better. He threw 2 interceptions against Kansas City. So ideally, if he didn't have that, he'd be coming in with 2 picks thrown so far on the season. Denver has lost 7 fumbles, though, this season, which puts them at about 27th right now in the NFL. 11 giveaways, 21st. But the Broncos offense has allowed 20 total sacks so far on Russ this season. We know in that last game against the Chiefs, it was not pretty. Denver was struggling in pass protection. Mike McGlinchey on the right side. We'll hear from him a little bit later on here in this morning's installment of GMB, but Denver's going to have to be better in those regards and in those categories. I think, like, if you look at where Denver's in the green at, I mean, special teams is it. Now, gross punting average, they're ranked 28th, but that's a little deceptive because you think about situations. If you're a punter and you're punting it up and let's say you're at like your own 40-yard line or your 50-yard line, you're not trying to punt it really high. You're trying to punt it to where it's going to land inside the 20, bounce inside the 10. So your net gross is always going to be a little bit different, right? So I don't read too much into that. Riley Dixon has been fantastic for Denver this season. He has had maybe 1 or 2 punts. You're like, you want that back. But for the most part, he's been good. But Denver right now, in terms of punt return average, they rank first in the NFL, averaging 18.5 yards per return. Thank you, Marvin Mims, for that. You talk about punt return average against, Denver 7th right now. They're only allowing teams to get on average 6.8 yards per return against them in the punt return game. Their kickoff return average is first in the NFL, 35.2, and their kickoff return average against, they're allowing 20 yards per kick return, 7th in the NFL, and obviously top 10 in field goal percentage, 92.3. You look at Harrison Butker and the Chiefs, they're ranked first right now in field goal percentage. He's been pretty good, and he's nailed some long field goals. So we'll see where things are at when this matchup comes to a blow head-to-head in the final matchup between the Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs this upcoming Sunday in Power Field at Mile High. And that is your tale of the tape here as we look at it as it stands here. But Broncos country, we're going to get into some post-practice locker room footage. You're going to get some insight from several players like Alex Singleton, Jerry Jeudy, Mike McGlinchey, and also PJ Locke. You're going to get that on today's episode of GMB. Let me tell you about our friends over there, Superbook Sports. Why bet with the big boys this football season? Instead, try your hand with the local book. That's Superbook Sports. Superbook Sports is the book next door, just a dedicated team of the best odds makers in Las Vegas, making sure that you get the best prices and parlays anywhere. And now Superbook, they'll give you a bonus of up to $250 when you sign up and wager on the same day and use the promo code Mile High. So bet with the best and use promo code Mile High this football season with Superbook Sports. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Broncos country, following practice yesterday at the Centura Health Training Center, we got to go in the locker room and talk to players about this week's game, about some of the storylines impacting the team this week. And I feel like we should definitely start things off here by kind of taking a look at, okay, we already know about the Kareem Jackson suspension reduced from 4 games to 2. I thought PJ Locke actually had some pretty good points of emphasis on it. And look, a lot of players came out around the NFL. A lot of players came out on the Broncos in support of Kareem Jackson, because a lot of people are attaching a dirty label to him. That's simply not the case. Here's PJ Locke's thoughts on the Kareem Jackson hit, and maybe like what do players do? Like, what is the expectation for players in a situation to play defense in today's league?
I mean, we watched the film, we hit him with the shoulder. And like I said, just the fact that it looked bad, he hits hard, he delivers the blow, and he's a bigger guy, so you got to come with something to you. I mean, I don't have words for it. I don't have words for it. I just wish we were able to just actually break the film down and just tell us what we need to do. Tell us what we need to do. Don't say don't do this, don't teach us. You know what I'm saying? So that's the only thing. So everybody's back and everybody said it was a clean hit around here. If it was a bad hit, then we'd be like, hey, bro, you got to go low. Then if he go low and take somebody's knee out and blow their knee out, then he's a dirty player. So I don't know. I don't know what you do in the situation. I don't know. He's just playing football. So, like I said, when he gets back, he's going to be in that situation 3 or 4 times a game. So I don't know what you do in this situation.
PJ's spot on there. I mean, that's the nature of the game. Like, these guys are put in those situations where they have to make tackles, make big hits, and people are like, oh, we'll just wrap up. It's not always that. Sometimes you got to hit somebody, right? And Kareem's been playing the same way for 14 years and has never had the label of a dirty player. I'm with you. Free Jack. I think it's ridiculous, but, Justin Simmons, I thought, said it best, that the label that's been attached to Kareem is absolute BS. And he said a lot of things, too. And the NFL's got a long ways to go, I think, before they find the balance equity and how they dole out punishments and what they deem is finable versus suspendable, things like that. Just another nature of, how crazy and lopsided some of the stuff that goes on behind the disciplinary aspect of the National Football League here. But, aside from that, PJ was also asked, what do you do as a player? Like, you play the position. How do you adjust? And unfortunately, the NFL doesn't give any guidelines out. They just say, like, don't do it.
That's the only thing that pisses me off about the situation. So I understand, like, the disciplinary action we got to take and trying to protect the offensive player. I get that 100%, but to treat him like they treat him, I don't know.
I'm with PJ on that. They wanted to make an example out of Kareem Jackson, and unfortunately they did. And look, he's going to miss these next 2 games. He's going to miss Kansas City. He's going to miss the Buffalo Bills Monday Night Football game after the bye week here. But we also got to hear from Broncos inside linebacker Alex Singleton, who, look, him and Jerry Jeudy together this season have been very, very good. Right now, the Broncos defense is finding their groove, and now they're at a point where, okay, now they're finding ways to get off the field on 3rd down. They're finding ways to hold opponents out of the red zone. Their communication is much cleaner, but it's also tough too because you're also playing a duo between Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce that are very tough. Like, these guys could play football in the dark, turn off the lights in the stadium, and still have a 100% catch rate. That's how good this dynamic is, and nobody in the NFL has solved them. But for the Broncos, Singleton acknowledges that finding a way to reduce that is their biggest key to victory.
Kelce and Mahomes are kind of playing at a different level, especially for the last few weeks. So, you got to eliminate that, and it starts with stopping the run against any team, and then eliminating 87, help a lot against this team.
Everyone's still searching for a way to eliminate number 87, and the thing is I think NFL Live on ESPN did a great job of actually pinpointing this. They actually do not, like, Travis Kelce does not always run the right route. And that's by design, right? And there's a communication and a rapport with him and Mahomes where, okay, if there's a safety that's covering Kelce and he's lined up inside leverage and they have an inside route that's going to break at some point there, depending on if that safety goes down, they already have it like this rapport and chemistry with one another to where, okay, hey, if that safety goes down, I'm just going to run outside. I'm going to sit or I'm going to run a corner route. Like, they have this weird dynamic to them. But you know what? You see all the great quarterbacks have that with one of their receiving options, and Kelce and Mahomes, they are very, very hard to stop. I mean, you talk about high volume and production. I mean, they get that, right? And when you focus your efforts to try to take away Travis Kelce, then they have other guys that can hurt you, like Rashee Rice. Obviously, Marquez Valdes-Scantling is coming off of a big game against the Los Angeles Chargers, and then they also just re-added McCole Hardman back into the mix. So Denver's going to have their work cut out for them here this week, and obviously it's going to be a cold game. And Alex Singleton was asked something along the lines of, how do you feel about the cold weather? Well, for him, he's used to playing in the cold, but he tells Broncos fans, bring a jacket.
Yeah, I love it. I'm used to it. Playing in Montana and Canada, I'm pretty used to it. It's 35 even. That's not cold yet. It's still dust freezing.
It is for some of the fans in the stands.
Yeah, just show up, bring a jacket, you'll be fine.
Show up, bring a jacket, you'll be fine. Alex is one of the best dudes to talk to inside that locker room, but obviously, he plays with his hair on fire. This week is going to be big for Denver. We talk so much about flipping the switch. Can the Broncos flip the switch against Kansas City? A win could give them momentum to go on a run in the second half of the season, despite them starting off 2-5, which is not ideal. Their room for error is very, very small, and it makes things a little more difficult for their path to try to battle out of it. But Denver can find a way to flip the switch and get a win. It could be big for them this for the rest of the season here. But let's also go to Broncos offensive tackle Mike McGlinchey, who met with us in the locker room. Now, the last time the Broncos had to create a game plan, it was coming off of a Sunday night game where they played the New York Jets, and not necessarily Sunday night, Sunday afternoon, where they're playing the New York Jets. And then they had to go around and turn it around for a Thursday night football matchup against Kansas City. Mike McGlinchey talked about whether or not that type of game that they had initially, where it wasn't the best and obviously probably not very good for the Broncos offense, what they can do to learn from that and how it can impact this week's matchup and their game preparation against Kansas City.
I think so. Obviously, it was a short week, and I don't know if anybody was at their full stuff on a Thursday night. But obviously, have more time to absorb the game plan, more time to actually get a game plan in. I think it'll be a great battle. Obviously, I really don't think that much of what happened on Thursday night is going to have an effect on this weekend. It's going to be a new battle, and just you got to win your matchups, and that's all it comes down to.
Well, and that's the thing is Denver didn't win their matchups in that first game against Kansas City. Kansas City defensively, they made it very difficult for the offense to get into rhythm. They created a lot of pressure on the backside, pressure against Russell Wilson. Even on the outside edge, Mike McGlinchey struggled in this game. So you got to hope that, hey, hopefully that first game doesn't have any impact on this game here. Obviously, Denver has more time to put some stuff in here. I'm very curious to see what Sean Payton is going to come out with. And one guy, obviously, who is a big headline going into that Thursday night football game against the Kansas City Chiefs, Jerry Jeudy. He also met with the media, and he talked to us about facing them 2 times in the span of 3 weeks.
Played them, you played them before, just like a week before, so, you understand their tendencies and what they like to do and what they don't like to do. So, we just adjust from the last game and just do what we need to do for this game to improve much better.
I think a lot of it has to start with the route concepts that Denver has. I thought Dan Orlovsky did a great job breaking down after that game what Kansas City did. I mean, Denver would go to a trips formation to the left. They'd run similar route concepts, and it was just easy for Kansas City to take away the leverage of being outside because Denver would try to run outside routes to the sticks, and they were already on top of it. Russell Wilson had nowhere to go. Nobody was getting open. Pressure was all around him. Kansas City is going to try to replicate that same exact model here this upcoming week, but you know how you can counteract that? A very, very good balance of run. That's what Denver needs to do with Jaleel McLaughlin, Javonte Williams, Samaje Perine. Continue to utilize these 3 guys in the way that you kind of did last week against the Green Bay Packers. We'll see where Denver is at with it going forward here. But Broncos country will have you covered on tomorrow's episode of Good Morning Broncos with the latest practice report, injury updates, and more. Some of the storylines, key matchups to watch for, keys to victory. You're going to get all that in tomorrow's brand new GMB. Appreciate you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.